Sugar, a sweet substance that has fueled much of the modern world. It's in our morning coffee, our baked goods, and our candies. It's something we often take for granted. But it wasn't always so innocent. Sugar's story is steeped in dark history, a history that played a pivotal role in fueling the transatlantic slave trade. This is not just about sweetness. This is about human suffering, exploitation, and power. Sugar, in its purest form, began its journey thousands of years ago in the ancient lands of Southeast Asia, particularly India and New Guinea. It was there that the art of cultivating and extracting sugar from the juice of sugarcane or sugar beets began. Initially, sugar was a rare luxury reserved only for the elite and powerful. It wasn't until the 7th century, when the Moors introduced sugar cultivation to the Mediterranean, that it began to spread to Europe. By the 15th century, the Portuguese and Spanish explorers had ventured into the Caribbean and South America, where they discovered vast, fertile lands perfect for sugar cultivation. Soon, sugar plantations sprang up in the colonies of the New World, primarily in the Caribbean, Brazil, and parts of South America. What was once a luxury became a commodity that Europeans craved, and that the New World would be forced to provide. The demand for sugar soared, and so did the need for cheap labor. The solution was cruel yet simple: enslaved Africans. The plantation economy depended on this brutal system, and soon millions of Africans were forcibly taken from their homeland and transported across the Atlantic. They were subjected to unimaginable conditions aboard ships, packed tightly in the dark, suffocating holds of slave ships, where survival was often a miracle. Once in the New World, these men and women were forced to work in the sugar fields under brutal conditions. Sugar cultivation was grueling, dangerous work. The heat, the labor-intensive process of cutting and processing the cane, the threat of disease, and the constant fear of violence created an environment where survival itself was a constant struggle. It was here that the sugar plantation became not just a symbol of economic growth but a monument to human suffering. The real horror of the sugar trade lies in the human cost. The slave trade was not just a trade of people, it was a trade of lives. In the Caribbean, the death rate among slaves was staggeringly high due to the unbearable working conditions, poor nutrition, and rampant disease. Some plantations had a turnover rate as high as 100% within a few years, meaning that the number of slaves working on a plantation was constantly replenished by the brutal force of the trade. Disease, malnutrition, and overwork led to an early death for many. The sugar industry was directly linked to the exploitation and annihilation of millions. The very sweetness that enriched European coffers left behind a legacy of pain, death, and trauma that still echoes today. However, sugar's role in the world wasn't just a dark tale. Sugar became the cornerstone of the European economy, with the sweet substance fueling entire industries. In the colonies, sugar plantations grew into massive operations that could take advantage of cheap labor, and the profits poured into European banks, strengthening empires and leading to further colonization and conquest. Sugar's influence extended beyond the plantations. It helped finance the Industrial Revolution, funding the development of machinery and trade routes. In the colonies, sugar became a status symbol, a sign of wealth and power. Back in Europe, sugar moved from the elite tables of kings and queens to becoming an everyday product in homes across the continent. By the 18th century, sugar had been transformed into a commodity that was more accessible, shaping diets, culinary habits, and even the rise of new industries like the confectionery market. While the sugar trade is a story steeped in tragedy, it also brought about profound innovations. The need for more efficient sugar production led to advances in agriculture, science, and technology. The development of new machinery to process sugar more efficiently, the establishment of vast trade networks, and even the creation of rum, derived from sugarcane, are all part of the legacy that sugar left behind. The rum trade itself became a key factor in the triangular trade between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. But perhaps the greatest lesson to be learned from the sugar industry is the impact of inequality, exploitation, and human suffering on the course of history. The wealth generated by sugar came at a tremendous cost, one that has never truly been acknowledged until the modern era. The sugar trade was a driving force behind the transatlantic slave trade, and the consequences of that dark period continue to reverberate. Today, sugar is woven into the fabric of modern life. It's in our desserts, our drinks, our foods. Yet, it's impossible to ignore the bitter history that accompanies every grain of sugar that we consume. It's a reminder of the way greed and power can shape industries, how innovation can come at a cost, and how our modern world was built on the backs of those who were forced to toil for the sweetness we now take for granted. The history of sugar is a story of cruelty, economic growth, and social change. It's a reminder that the things we often take for granted have deep, complicated histories. Sugar has sweetened our lives, but it has also left us with a legacy that's anything but sweet. The next time you add a spoonful of sugar to your tea or indulge in a piece of chocolate, remember that this simple ingredient carries with it a heavy history. A history of labor, suffering, and the quest for power. But it's also a history of resilience, of people fighting for freedom and justice, of innovations that have shaped our world. Sugar, like all things, is a reflection of the complexity of human history. A story of sweetness, yes, but also of the sacrifices that made it possible. Hit the like button and follow for more stories on history's hidden truths and the lessons we can learn from them.